say thank you very much, everyone. Let's give a huge round of applause at home, wherever you are, to Neil Drumm, who is presenting this topic I've been really looking forward to, how Drupal.org is built. Thank you.
Hi, yeah, so I'm Neil Drumm. I work for the Drupal Association on the engineering team. I'm in Brooklyn and left my second and third displays at home. So hopefully I'll get through this with speaker notes on an iPad here. I work on this site, Drupal.org, and I got involved with it sometime around 2006 or 2007, as far as I can tell, starting with working on api.drupal.org as a volunteer. And at some point after that, Dries was going on vacation and messaged me on IRC and asked if I wanted SSH access to the one server. I think it's actually a VM, so not even a whole server, and to cover anything while he was offline. And been working on Drupal.org in various roles and responsibilities since then. And started at the association more officially in 2010. The board of directors at the time got a redesign together and tried having volunteers implement it, but of course, 10 companies volunteering, 15 people didn't quite bring the website together. So a few of us went on contract to get that done and launched. And yeah, since then, been contracting the association and then went full-time eventually. And today it's not just me working on the site, it's my 3 coworkers, my boss, Tim Lennon, Hestenet on Drupal.org, Brendan, who is a developer, and he also is the one that handles most of the support if you email help@drupal.org. Mixologic, Ryan Aslett, he is the developer services engineer, so stuff like Drupal CI and Composer, or Composer endpoint. And I do a bit of everything, anywhere from, I did a bit of theming this week, CSS work. Sometimes I'll go as deep as getting into our configuration management system and reconfiguring things. And we get a lot of help from Narayan Newton and the rest of Tag One Consulting. They are our contract for infrastructure services, handling stuff like actually managing the configuration management and provisioning servers, VMs, making sure everything's, all the operating system software services are up to date, secure. And Michael Hess is a super volunteer who mainly does proof of concepts for stuff like Drupal Steward and some of the automatic update stuff. So yeah, altogether, us and a few volunteers build this site. But it's not just one site, it's really 8 Drupal sites. In addition to www.drupal.org, it's association.drupal.org. Mainly that's for electing the at-large seat on the association board nowadays. api.drupal.org, the API reference, events for DrupalCons, and groups.drupal.org, that is still on Drupal 6. So that site definitely could use some more maintenance. Drupal jobs, we have a job board for hiring Drupal talent and getting your resume out there. Localize for translating the Drupal software, and security.drupal.org, which handles coordinating with people reporting security issues and us as the security team coordinating the people, module maintainers fixing those issues and doing a coordinated disclosure. Yeah, real quick, someone asked about a single sign-on. We are currently using a module called Bakery. It's probably, I don't know if I would use the same system if we were starting from scratch today, but basically it's allows Drupal.org to act as the www.drupal.org to authenticate all the sites with single sign-on. And as we move to Drupal 8, we'll be looking at other options, or maybe we'll stick with Bakery and get that updated to Drupal 8. I believe it's probably somewhere around halfway ported last I knew. And it's not just websites that we do. We provide services. The localized.drupal.org that provides downloadable translation files for sites and Drupal downloads, actually downloading Drupal and modules, the thousands of modules Drupal has. The Composer endpoint that is being able to install Drupal with Composer and Drupal projects with Composer, and we host that, the Technologist equivalent for Drupal.org ourselves, so it has a direct connection to all of the modules that exist in other projects. And the developer tools, so stuff like Drupal CI and GitLab. And we are adding a couple new services. Automatic updates, that actually is in production as of January or December. I'll talk a little bit about that later. And Drupal Steward will be coming up, I believe, later this year to add a layer of protection from highly critical Drupal core security issues as they're announced. So you don't necessarily have to have your site updated right away. A little bit less risk. And automatic updates, that is something, a service that I was deeply involved in for the Drupal.org side of things. First, there is a public service announcement API that I built. So you want to, your site wants to know when it will be updating. You don't necessarily want your site to automatic update for all Drupal, for all security releases. It's the highly critical ones that the security team knows will be exploited against a lot of sites pretty quickly. A lot of the other core security issues, you want to get your site updated quickly and efficiently, but a lot of them come with things like, you know, it's only for admins or only for authenticated users and will affect different sites in different ways. But it's the highly critical ones that affect pretty much all sites that we want automatic updates to handle. So this API will let sites know in a machine-readable way that one of these is coming up. And the main work of that, of building this, was done by Michael Hess. And I took that kind of proof of concept, reviewed and revised and deployed it. And on our end, it's basically a drush command that lets you pick what goes into this feed. And then it'll purge the URL in our CDN. And there's also a, so once the site knows that it might want to update, it has to know if it is in a good condition to be updated. So that's the Drupal.org side of that is the release contents checksums API. So this version of automatic updates, it works pretty much by replacing chunks of code as if they were downloaded as a new tarball off of Drupal.org. So it's not patching or anything. It's literally replacing files. And if you've patched your code base, if you have hacks to core on your site, that's not in a good spot to do ACK updates, because it will get the site into an inconsistent state where some of your local changes might go away, some might stay, and it'll just get your site to a position where it probably won't work, or it runs a high risk of not working. So we have an API which has the checksum of every single file in every single release of Drupal, and every single release of any Drupal module theme distribution. So the client can check for if any of the files have been changed in any way. And at the top, you'll see a few things, untrusted comment, and then some those strings that start with RW. That is package signing or data signing. It is since automatic updates are a pretty high stakes API, we want to be able to verify that this data is not tampered with as it goes from our servers to your sites. So that stuff is based on BSD's Signify, and it's a change signature format that David Strauss, Peter Bolannon, and Mike Bainton put together that allows us to have intermediate keys. And basically, we have a VM that's separated from the rest of our infrastructure, that its only job is to hold on to that intermediate key and add that bit of data to the top of these files. And then Drupal sites can verify that with a static root key. And we don't have to have the private version of the root key on a live server. In fact, it's on a hardware security module, little USB stick type thing that 4 of us have, and there's actually no way to get that off of the hardware security module in a unencrypted form, so we can't even view it. We just use that HSM to sign new intermediate keys and update those to the signing Oracle VM. And the way this first iteration of automatic updates works is it is replacing files. It's not working with Composer or anything like that. So it's not compatible with Composer if your site's built that way. And it does, our target here was the kind of lowest common denominator sites that you just put up somewhere and forget about, and maybe they're on underpowered shared hosting, stuff like that. So let's see. Extracting a full copy of Drupal, that might be, that's more stuff that could go wrong. What this client is doing is just replacing the files that have changed, and deleting the files which have been removed, if any. So that's what we produce is a zip file of the deletion manifest. That's the list of files that no longer exist. Then a full copy of any files that have changed. And we'll generate this for any combination of releases for any project. So the client can get into, I believe it does some module updating now, but the main goal is Drupal core updating. But this future-proofs are the Drupal.org side of it. And the whole file itself, that gets signed as a separate thing that the client downloads. And that client is a Drupal module. And I was doing all of the work on the server side, along with a few other volunteers. And the client, that was sponsored by the European Commission, and Lucas Heading did most of the implementation. And it's out of beta. It's a stable release now. And again, it's for simple sites installed via just downloading files and putting them on a server. So it won't work for composer managed sites. If you have a deployment workflow already, that's even better. If you have even better than using automatic updates, if you have a CI pipeline and testing for your specific site, that's really where you'd like to be. But this is here for sites which don't have that. And composer support is coming in the next phase of work. Lucas has been tinkering with that, and we're looking for sponsors if anyone would like that to go faster. One of the big projects I worked on a couple years back was Drupal.org's issue crediting system. And that we've been crediting contributors for a long time. This is the earliest example I could find. Dries putting someone in the commit message. And that's, this system really grew out of the mentioning people's names in commit comments. What we were mentioning people in commit messages, it's great for code contributions, but it doesn't tell the whole story. We want to be able to credit organizations too, and find out if people are spending their own time on things, or if organizations were sponsoring their work, and find out which organizations were leading contributors. So internally, this is entity references. Project maintainers can credit people on issues, and people can attribute their effort to organizations. Each comment is a good place for you to attribute work as you go. So the comments have entity references to the organizations. Since the organization data is on comments, it made sense to make the underlying storage for the credit to be entity references to those comments. And as a project maintainer, when you tick that checkbox to credit someone, underneath it actually stores references to every comment by one of the credited people. So if someone switches attribution halfway through an issue, everything gets aggregated together for the issue. There's a couple more things in the field storage, so it's not quite as simple as 2 entity references. There's a checkbox to explicitly mark volunteer contributions, and another entity reference field to call out organizations as end customers. It makes some fun queries when doing reports. This is just the one that one of the ones I found quickly looking through my MySQL history. It's one of the smaller queries for this data that I've done. And since this is issue credit rather than something in a Git commit, it's ended up being used for crediting other important non-code work. We didn't initially plan on exactly this use, but it's helping fill a good gap since, of course, code contributions are not the only way of contributing. The rest of the work, organizing, communicating, documenting, designing, deserves just as much recognition. And there's a page on Drupal.org, which is not well advertised, because it has some of the graphs on here on that page are good. It's Drupal.org/metrics. And some of the graphs on there, like number of users created per month, that's not actually all that useful, because most of the users on the site are spammers or unused accounts, and it's really just it's not really measuring anything. But commit, getting into commit credit, how many people were credited per month, that is a more useful metric of someone doing something tangible to help the project. So that page has a graph of how many people were contributing credited per month, broken up a few different ways. Drupal's a global project, so we have it broken out by region. And I believe last year, or maybe the year before last, we added well, actually, we added this in a little before 2016, because that's when the graph starts. We added the ability for people to self-identify as being a member of a underrepresented community, such as your race is a minority in your field and location, or woman in a male-dominated industry. Actually, I have in my notes, we added this in 2018. So that's part of why the not specified is so big. You can go to your user profile and update this, and this graph updates once a day as people fill in their data. It's all self-reported and kept confidential, except for aggregate reports like this. And the spike in 2017, that is when the multilingual initiative completed. They decided to do a single issue as just a kind of a party thanking everyone who had contributed throughout the years. And that was quite a few people. And the third way it's broken out right now is whether you're contributing explicitly as a volunteer or for an organization, or a bit of both. And we get to use. We also get to use the commit credit data as the ranking in the marketplace. So that used to be Drupal.org/marketplace. That used to be alphabetical, and now it's ranked by how much, rough metric of how much organizations are giving back. But it's still not covering everything, all the types of contribution. Still pretty focused on code contribution, things that fit into issues. We'll see stuff like that example before of getting people making an issue to credit someone speaking at a conference or speaking at a meetup or attending a meeting. We have the Contribution Recognition Committee who is working on making recommendations for the next round of and future rounds of stuff that gets recognized on user profiles and organization profiles. And they're meeting now. They have a survey out. Best way to find it, I think, if there's a link to it in the slides that are linked from my session on the MidCamp site. You could also go to the association blog, and it's 2 or 3 blog posts down. And that's the blog post title, Drupal Contribution Culture. And they have a survey looking for what people are doing for Drupal and what they'd like to be recognized for. And what else are we working on? So that's a couple big examples of things I've been working on in the past few years. We have other projects in the pipeline right now. A lot of stuff motivated by the upcoming Drupal 9 release. I think it's a beta release that's coming out later today, such as, and also for Drupal 9, improving composer support in Drupal core and making the packaged downloads of Drupal composer ready. So in the past, if you tried running composer commands on regular downloaded Drupal, it would not get you into a good spot. But now with the recent versions of, I believe it's Drupal 8.8 and later, you can download Drupal, and then it works the same as if you would start run composer or create project, because that's exactly what it's doing on our servers. I am working on semantic versioning for Contrib, for Drupal modules and themes. So getting rid of that first bit, the 8x, and because Drupal projects, they can be compatible with Drupal 8 and 9 simultaneously. Wouldn't make sense to have a 9x in front of your version numbers because there's no such thing as a Drupal 9 module. It's at minimum, it probably works with Drupal 8.9 or later. There's some stuff that truly is 9 only, but there's no way to have projects be Drupal 8 projects or Drupal 9 projects now, thanks to Core's semantic versioning and the way they're handling deprecations and adding new features every 6 months. Since we're changing how version numbers work, we're going all the way to semantic versioning, so adding the third component, the .0 at the end. So that's a lot of going through, auditing all the site. In some cases, auditing other sites like localized.drupal.org for everywhere that version numbers are handled, and making sure that those are work with the new formatting. And we're getting towards the end of that project. It's in a place where it's ready to be enabled when Core supports it. It turns out Core, since it's been around since before we used semantic versioning, it doesn't actually have great support for semantic versioning, but that's fixed in the more recent releases. And I'm moving on to the parts of it that are more front end, like UI related. We can change how the project search works at any time, before we need to get the data model correct. So the thing I'm literally working on right now is changing the core compatibility filter when you search for a module from used to be just that prefix of the version number to using dependency data to figure out if it works with some version of Drupal 9, if it works with some version of Drupal 8, or some version of Drupal 7. So that'll be deployed hopefully later today, maybe on Monday. One of my coworkers, Brendan, is working on event listings. So taking some of the weight off of Drupal and groups.drupal.org. What Drupal is doing right now is when they see an event on groups.drupal.org, they manually figure out where it is, like where it actually is in the world. There's no geocoding on groups.drupal.org. So taking some weight off of the old Drupal 6 site, groups.drupal.org. And something else I'll be working on in the near future, probably in the next couple months, maybe 6 months, is issue forks. So we migrated all of our repositories to GitLab. We should use it for something interesting now. The unique thing about how we'll be doing issue forks on Drupal.org is they'll be collaborative. So if you fork a project on GitHub or GitLab.com, it'll just be for your access. And you could add individual collaborators one by one, but the way a lot of Drupal issues work is there's multiple people who just show up and help out with an issue. And it's not something you'd want to run through an invitation process. We don't know who's going to work on what issue ahead of time. So we'll have issue forks that anyone can get access to contribute to. And really the main work is going to be figuring out is, does everyone have access right away with their Git account, or does do they have to click an additional button to get access to a specific issue? Or do we want to allow force pushes? Do we want to have branches that are person specific, and then people can merge from each other's branches? Stuff like, if it's a free-for-all, Git is not the easiest, doesn't have the best UI. It's easy to force push and not know that you're deleting something that someone else worked on. So getting the restrictions in there so that people can collaborate, and there's some guide rails so people don't overwrite each other's work accidentally, or hopefully not intentionally. And we have to update all these sites to Drupal 8 or Drupal 9 at some point. And we have the old site groups, that's a Drupal 6 site. So we're working on technical debt cleanup right now. Stuff like the events listing. If we can get that to a good enough spot, that's one less content type on groups.drupal.org, and we won't have to migrate that. The association site, it's really for elections now, but there are some old blog posts on there which we can migrate, and then we don't have to update the blog functionality on the association site to Drupal 8 or 9. Upgrading PHP, so we're not doing a PHP upgrade at the same time as a Drupal upgrade. So getting everything organized before actually updating. And for Drupal.org itself, last time we did a migration updating to Drupal 7, we actually turned the site off for 24 hours. And I actually stayed up probably for about 30 hours, or probably more than that, with all of the pre-migration and post-migration cleanup. And we probably can't get away with that nowadays. I think people expect Drupal.org to be up 24/7. So we'll have to figure out an incremental migration for www.drupal.org. Let's see, get through the last few slides and then handle all of the questions. So supporting all of these works, all of this work, that's those are a few examples of stuff we do. There's a lot of day-to-day things. This week, the things I can remember doing are cleaning up a bit of spam, helping with the security releases around CK Editor on Wednesday, and actually did those security updates for our 3 sites that use CK Editor on Drupal.org. Fixed a data loss bug and a CSS issue and a bunch of other kind of random stuff I can't remember. And it doesn't all come for free. My coworkers and I are paid employees at the association, and we do use various services which charge various amounts. They're not all free, although a lot of these companies do give us generous discounts. And some of these are open source projects that there's no monetary cost, but we do have to spend our time to actually use them. So we use a lot of third-party services nowadays, like Slack and Zoom for communicating among our team, Datadog for monitoring and logging, Zendesk if you've emailed help@drupal.org. And we have actual servers. There's at least 11 physical servers racked at the Oregon State University Open Source Lab. We haven't bought new servers in a few years, just replacement parts when needed, except for the database and media servers, and we're moving the media servers. Everything is just a host for virtual machines. So we get the most out of the hardware we have and can stay pretty flexible, be able to move virtual machines around as needed. And we do have a contract with the Oregon State University Open Source Lab for their fees. And the engineering team, we're only 4 people out of the 18 people on staff at the association. My coworkers, they produce DrupalCons and do stuff like coordinate Drupal branding and marketing with the Promote Drupal initiative and much more. So membership is the easiest way to support us financially, either as individual or organization. And if you're a organization who has a bit more of a budget, supporting partners, they directly benefit Drupal.org. The supporting partner revenue is earmarked for the engineering team and building Drupal.org. And in addition to helping out, benefits include increased visibility and boost in Drupal.org Marketplace ranking. And especially this week, we're organizing a conference in May and figuring out how that is going to be affected, and the whole industry is affected by the COVID-19 situation. So these are some of the people who've reached out, given some concrete supports in the past few days around all of that. And we're seeing seeing what we can do for Minneapolis, and seeing if that can go on or if it needs to be moved. And there's updates on the events.drupal.org site for what we end up doing there. And that list will also be updated as more people step up on the event site. And that is all I have for the regular presentation. Come to the contribution day on Saturday, tomorrow. There's information on the website. And I should get Slack out of there. I'll just do the Zoom chat. I was originally thinking this would be on Slack, but so first question is
actually, before we get to that, Neil,
yeah.
I just want to do something really quick.
Sure.
I want to unmute everybody at the same time. Let's all give Neil a round of applause, like we're in the same room with him. Woo! All right. Now I'll unmute you again, Neil. All right, let's get to those questions. So I just want to make you feel, say a big thank you.
Thanks. So how do we track the number of downloads of a module or sites reporting using a module? So right now, we are not actually tracking the number of downloads. That is something that broke a few months ago for because of some SSL issues, something like that. It's just like stopped working, and we haven't gotten to fixing it, partly because download count is not really a meaningful statistic. There's a lot of CI systems and automated things that are downloading modules that it's not really a meaningful metric. So I think in all likelihood, we'll probably take downloads off of project pages at some point. But if you really look at them, they haven't updated since, I believe, November. Sites reporting using a module, that is a more interesting metric since it is when your site checks update status, we're counting that. That is a individual site going to Drupal.org, and there's a unique identifier that each site generates, so we can count how many of those we've seen each week. It's a little bit of, there's some ways it overcounts and some ways it undercounts. With my coworker, Ryan, he's looked at the data in a lot of detail, and there's stuff like sites that don't have cron running that they'll check in once a month, and we don't count that because we are looking for sites that check in at least once a week. So that might be an undercount. And there's also sites which have update status turned off. They don't want that running in production. So that's a undercount. In the future, we're looking at doing a telemetry initiative to get even more data, stuff like, what version of PHP are you running on? What version of database are you running on? All with making it clear what your site is sharing and isn't sharing. And that would give the core maintainers and module maintainers a lot more data around making decisions like, well, do we need to support PHP 7.2, or maybe everyone is upgraded and we can stop supporting. And the actual way we count all of those numbers technically is most of those requests go to our CDN, Fastly, and that handles like 99.5% of the requests. They never hit our servers, except that we have the logs from that, the HTTP logs, and we aggregate those through some through some awk scripts, and that's usage stats. Who selects which? Next question. Who selects which modules are used on Drupal.org? That is mainly me and my coworkers. We're the ones who will have to look at maintaining something long-term and making sure it's a good module that's secure, has a Drupal 8 or 9 equivalent or upgrade when we upgrade. So yeah, it's us. We're running the site and figure out all the modules. And Marco asks, will pull request related feature be happening before the start of the Drupal 8 upgrade? Yes. So the where pull requests are right now is they work on staging, except for giving people access to push to them. So it's already probably like a third done. I think the who gets access to what and any restrictions around who can push to what, that's going to be the hard thing to figure out, I think. Let me see if I can switch to a browser. The way to get involved with, see much of the progress of pull request is get.drupalcode.org/issue. That's where the issue forks will live. And it is the shortest URL that has a link to this longer URL that has where the documentation will work, live for issue forks and merge requests. And we have a couple meta issues around that. And there's a lot of issues like, you know, decide on do we allow force pushes, do we deny force pushes, and figuring out all of these access ideas. And yeah, that all is pretty straightforward. Once we figure out, implement it, it'll be straightforward once we decide on all of the, how everyone works together. So that's something we can knock out before the Drupal 8 upgrade. And one last question. How can we help you to make less burden to maintain the sites? Do you have some good tips to help your to help your team? Let's see. I mean, the big project on the horizon is the Drupal 8 or 9 upgrade. So looking at modules we use and making sure they have a good Drupal 8 or Drupal 9 version. Let's see. The code base for all of the sites is on Bitbucket. It was just the cheap option at the time, and we don't want to host the stuff to build our site on our site itself. That'd be a circular dependency. But the way we actually deploy the sites and make changes to the sites is we have public repositories for each site with a drush makefile, since this is Drupal 7. And yeah, you'll see, you know, I was doing a lot of work this week, just CK editor upgrades, and do, you know, 3 or 4 deployments on an average day. Well, probably between 1 and 4 deployments on an average day. These are a lot of quick things that are a lot of deployments, but other days will be just one thing or one thing every couple days. So that's the place to see what's getting deployed right now, and the full listing of this is all the modules that are running on Drupal.org, what versions of them, if we have any patches. So, I mean, that'd be a concrete way to help remove technical debt, get patches reviewed and into their parent projects. And if anyone else has questions.
There were a couple a little further up, and I think the asker of that first one around SEO, if you were going to talk about that, and if you could talk about SEO a little bit, that would be, I think, interesting.
Oh yeah, I covered those two as we went. The SSO, single sign-on.
Oh, single sign-on. I read that. I'm sorry, I heard that as SEO.
No worries.
And then you had a slide that showed usage, and there was a big spike in 2017.
Yeah, that was the multilingual initiative completing.
There you go. And
yeah, SEO, I personally don't pay attention to that too much nowadays.
Okay.
We'll occasionally do a round of getting the social share previews, like the screenshot that the image that shows up with sharing something, getting those like in a better condition. But we're in a good spot SEO wise. I don't know if people even track PageRank anymore, but I know we probably have a pretty high PageRank. And if you're, it's a site that's been around for a while and Google likes well enough. And yeah, if Webmaster Tools, Google Webmaster Tools sends an email saying like, there's something you can fix on this page, we'll take a quick look and fix it if it's actionable.
Right on. All right. Any other questions out there from our viewers, participants? Well, this has been great. Absolutely great. Can't thank you enough, Neil, for your time today and for participating and making MidCamp awesome. And thank you, everybody, for being here. I'm going to go ahead and let people unmute themselves if they'd like to move forward. And let's give one more quick round of applause as we end the recording to Neil.
If all of the other reasons aren't enough,